Right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first Scrutiny and Performance Committee. Right, could I ask everybody to note the fire safety instructions? Right, there are no planned fire drills for tonight. If, however, the alarm goes off, please use the fire exit through the main doors of the hall or through the fire exit in the storeroom adjacent to the stage. The fire assembly point is in the island in front of the main entrance of the building. Please do not delay in your evacuation to collect any belongings. Please do not return to the building until given permission to do so by the council staff. I would also like to remind you to please switch off your mobile phones or turn them onto silent. Please note that the meeting will be live streamed where the proceedings are capable of repeated viewing. Please ensure your microphone is switched on when speaking and you speak clearly into the microphone. Once finished speaking, can you please switch off your microphone to avoid feedback noise? There's nobody seated there are some people seated in the public area. If you're seated in the public area of the chamber, it is likely that your image will be captured by the recording camera and result in your image being part of the broadcast. If members are for any reason not present for the whole debate on an item, you will not be allowed to vote on that item. May I remind members to declare any interests and the nature of the interest at the beginning of the agenda item, and that on the declaring a pecuniary interest, you are required to leave the room when the item of business is being considered. Right then, agenda item 1, apologies for absence. I think everybody is here, so no apologies for absence. On members attending, we have Angelina Marriott and Councillor Phil Shaw. Sorry, Councillor Angelina Marriott. 3 declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest, please? No, okay. Public questions on notice. We have not received any public questions on notice. Okay, item 5. Performance indicator, formal complaints and freedom of information reporting. We will now consider a report of the Director of Policy and Transformation, Mr. Greg Campbell, to reintroduce a regular performance indicators, formal complaints and FOIs monitoring to the committee via a working group, reported on a quarterly basis. The report begins on page 5.1. Mr. Campbell, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Chair. I think you summed it up nicely there. It's just a new method that we can to report on performance of the organisation. We include the formal complaints in there, and also we've added FOIs. Previously, they haven't gone anywhere of note, so actually they're not public. So we're trying to make sure that we're open, transparent, and it gives also the opportunity for members to scrutinise what they are, how the performance is managing, and make recommendations through the working group of how we can improve or change things. So it's just adding a formal process to it. Happy to take any questions, sorry.
Any questions, members? Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a simple one. Greg, will it include highlighting any risks to us with any delay in responding to anything? Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, so part of the working party, when they're going through that, if there is delays, they should highlight that risk. So, for example, FOIs, if they're being delayed and it's causing a considerable problem, there should be a recommendation coming forward to either you look at that more closely or you actually recommend there may be something that you can do to make sure that that doesn't continue to happen. So I think it forms part of it. Risks won't be part of the formal reporting. They sit outside of this as a separate thing.
Councillor Capon.
Thank you, Chairman. As you can appreciate, I am reasonably new to this. Under 2.8, it says here that the member of each party on the council, this at present is 4. I'm assuming that is a floating number because obviously the makeup of the council changes quite considerably. If you've got an answer for that, I'll be obliged. Thank you.
Sorry, just wait for the chair. Just go through the chair, sorry. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've set it up as 4 because that's the equal to the number of parties there at the moment. If that changes, we can come back and we can look at how the working party is set up to make sure it's consistent with what is represented in the organisation or the member organisation, sorry.
Councillor Milne.
Yes, Greg. Just a question really on freedom of information, just before we get on to it. In the large organisations, there's a process. Usually there's a single point of contact for these who logs and then farms them out with a time delay, which could be 2 weeks to respond or whatever it is. Is that what we're going to be doing? Because in logging the number of these things and the delay, and that's how they did it in the Met Police. That's what I know. So
Greg,
basically, it doesn't.
Come back on that.
Yeah, it's only an outline.
You're
for
quite
that.
right. Someone
Yeah.
does log them, and there is a
Just the
slight delay.
process.
So the process and how they will report them will take into account of that. So there'll be a fixed point every kind of quarter. It stops at that point, and we'll be reporting on that number of FOIs from that quarter, where they've got to, and then so on for the next quarter and the next quarter. But it was something we had to debate, I must admit, because actually it's quite fluid, actually.
I know it was a little bit of drilling down, but that was just an outline. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got a question for Greg. Will the reporting be across both councils? Because the one team will work in both councils, so will we have the figures across both or just applicable to Rochford?
So we hadn't intended to share, but not for any particular reason. We can certainly share, and it may be good practice too if you want to. I mean, it's all open public, so I'm quite happy to bring along as a comparison, or to just share them informally amongst the members.
Thank you, Greg. The reason I asked that is because we're going to be looking at their work, and it's across both councils, not just us. So if they're going to be stuff gets delayed and things, it might not be. It'd be across both.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay. So I will move the recommendations set out in page 5.1 of the report. Do I have a seconder? So Councillor Shaw had her hand up first. Thank you. Right. Seconds may speak for 3 minutes. Don't need to do that. Debate. We've had the debate. Do you want another debate? We had the debate. That's fine. Okay then. Right. We now vote on the 2 recommendations set out on page 5.1 of the report. Recommendation 1, to agree the regular reporting of performance indicator complaints and freedom of information to the Performance Complaints and FOI Working Group on a quarterly basis. Everybody in agreement with that? Agreed. That's unanimous. And 2, to agree the creation of a Performance Complaints and FOI Working Group in line with the terms of reference, including Appendix 2 of this report. Everybody agree with that?
I think we might be taking a vote on these recommendations.
I was about to ask for a vote now.
Taking them together.
Well, the first one I said, everybody agree, and they said all agreed. On show of hands. Okay, sorry. Okay, so do you want to take these in block or separately? In block. Right, so can I have a show of hands, those in favour? That's unanimous. I won't bother with the other 2. That concludes that item. Right, item 6. Oh, sorry. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Chairman. It's only a question with regard to recommendation 2. When are we to form the working group, please? Through you to the officer. Thank you.
So I've sent an email today just to warm the leaders up of each group if they can think about a nomination for this group. And I am looking at the first week in September, which gives us ample time to have that meeting, and then 2 weeks to complete the report, any recommendations onto committee.
Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, item 6, to review the council's current outside body and partnership arrangements. Members will now consider the report of the Acting Joint Director of Governance seeking committee's agreement to continue the outside body and partnership review process during the municipal year with a final report and recommendations to be brought back to this committee in the Q4. The report begins on page 6.1. Mr. Campbell, do you have anything to add to this report?
Nothing really, Chair. The report is before you. I think the important point is that it is going to be coming back in Q4 once a thorough review of these outside bodies and once it's given time for those who are on the outside bodies this year to be reporting back on how they're working as well. So that fits into the process.
Councillor Shaw.
Thank you. I'm actually chairman of SEP. On 6.3, item 1, it says 2 meetings and monthly Teams calls. We don't have team calls at all. They are all in person at Chelmsford City Council. And there's more than 2 meetings a year.
Mr. Campbell, we'd like to come back on that.
I think they're the important things that their team, the corporate governance team, will capture. So moving forward, so we get a real understanding of what's going on. As you point out, it's not twice a year and it's not on Teams. It's physical, it's in Chelmsford. Actually, that's a bigger burden. So when councillors, members actually put their hand up and say, yeah, I want to be that, they want to know what they're getting involved with as well, first of all, how often it is, what that involves. And I think that's some of the work that we need to do.
Right, Chairman, do you want me to put that in writing to you, Craig?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Apologies, Chair. Anything that there is that you think needs to be noted, let myself, Veronica know as well. That'd be
Not a problem at all. Thank you.
Councillor Capon.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a little bit of clarification, really, more than anything else. It would be helpful if some of these outputs, I noticed that there's some, obviously, that you probably not got anybody for, if it states whether they're daytime meetings or evening meetings, because that before, going back some time ago, and I know things have changed when I was on the council, there was some I couldn't do because they were daytime meetings and obviously clash with work. I can't consider anything if it doesn't tell me whether it's daytime or evening.
Greg, would you like to come back on that?
absolutely, that's another thing that we need to capture as well. Thank you.
Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Chairman. It was just for a little bit of clarity from the work that was done before on this. It was quite clear that it wasn't complete, hence it coming back. And some good points have already been raised, one correction and one point to be taken into consideration. And that wasn't the officers' fault at all. That was the information that was given to the officers at the time that compiled this report. Thank you, Chairman.
Were there any other questions on us, or a couple of hands go up? Questions that's likely been answered? Councillor Cripps.
Thank you, Dan. New kid on the block, so just asking some daft questions. I noticed in the appendix here, there's a few negative, what I would call negative statements, where there wasn't any meeting called, I wasn't called to any meetings, I didn't attend, there was nothing to attend. There's quite a few negative ones in there. It sort of makes you wonder with some of these committees, just how effective they are, if that's what came back. Presumably, Greg, you trawled this information and got it back, and these are the stuff coming back, yeah?
I'd like to lay claim that I did all this work, but it wasn't me. There was a working group that was set up, and I think they brought it back. No, that's absolutely fine. I think the working group is going to continue later this year, and that's, again, grabbing all the information. But I think it's also for all members to feed into that. Any information they've got that they're on any group, and if it's different to their, or they're feeling it's either of real value or less value, to put that forward.
Yeah, I was just reading through them, and I hit a patch of sort of quite negative sort of responses, and it made me wonder, how much effort we have to put into doing this, if at all. But okay, thanks.
I think there's going to be a consultation going out to members, so if you can all remind your group members on these outside bodies to please give us feedback, that'd be really useful. Any more questions? No? Let's move on. Right then, I move the recommendation set out on page 6.2 of the report. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Shaw. Right, we will now vote on the two recommendations as set out on page 6.2 of the report. Recommendation 1, to note the context of the report. Noted. Recommend 2, to continue with the review of outside bodies and to agree the report be brought back to the Scrutiny and Performance Committee in Q4, outlining further findings of the review process. Have a show of hands, please, those in favour. That's unanimous again. Thank you very much. Right, now we move on to item 7. Members will now consider the 2023-2024 Overview and Scrutiny Committee Work Plan to help determine whether there are any new items that this committee would be keen to explore or revisit from the 23-24 work plan for the remainder of this municipal year. Do you need questions or ideas or things like to put forward? Councillor Shaw.
Thank you. Being new on for last year on this committee, on 7.4, it says blue badge parking holders.
That was finished, if I remember correctly.
That's been finished, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It doesn't say anything.
Yeah.
There's a blank column to the left, something in the middle, blank column to the right. So I didn't know. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I remember voting on this.
Thank you.
Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Chairman. I know you've already been looking into the work plan for 2024. I would like us to revisit highway rangers, as that went on to the executive who at that time were to look into funding for continuation of it. So it would be interesting to find the outcome of that. And the cost of living, the report of the cost of living task and finish group, if we could have a report come back to us to see if there's still, I believe there's funding for, it could possibly be the hub to deliver some more work around supporting our communities on the cost of living crisis. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. Got the notes of that. Any more questions? Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd quite like to see a piece of work around the upcoming consultation around the Mill Hall and the Freight House. I know that consultation has been awarded now, but I'd certainly be interested in seeing how well that is run and making sure that our local residents are able to have a proper voice in that, particularly in Rochford, where sometimes I think we get a little bit missed out. Thank you, Chairman.
Got that noted, yep.
So
Sorry,
it's just
Greg.
only because of the timing of the committee and also the timing of potentially that consultation, which I think is due to start around September, October time. Can I go away and speak to the officer who's overseeing that and ask how maybe she can provide some information on what is going to occur in that consultation? Because I think otherwise we won't have enough speed to get something to hear for a report because the consultation was due to start. Does that make sense? Or was I-
It
Councillor
does.
Webb, if you'd like to
Yeah.
come back.
It does. I think it'd just be helpful for this committee to make sure that we're happy with how that consultation will take place, and to make sure that our residents are able to have a strong voice in that consultation. What I'd hate to see happen is a consultation is done very quickly behind closed doors. I think it'd be helpful if it could come here so we could just check we're happy with the process.
Greg.
If it helps, just I know a snippet of what is likely to be included in that consultation, which is a key stakeholder group, and there is a public consultation that is going to be out as well.
Can I come back on that? I think, well, maybe
We can talk.
I think we're concerned about the consultation. When the consultation, it will go to council, I expect, or the committee to agree it. And if before it's implemented, we always have that ability to call something in if we feel we want to. So that's an option we can use at the time. Sorry, Councillor Capon, I think was slightly before Councillor Shaw.
No, it was me. Thank you, Councillor. Chairman, can I ask, obviously, if you're going to put out a consultation, how far that's going out from, for instance, where the freight house is? Because the freight house actually deals with quite a wide area, or has done in the past, especially when we've had the Canberra beer festivals, etc. It does go out quite a distance. Is there a set distance from the object concerned to how far the consultation goes out? Obviously, I don't expect it to come all the way to Rayleigh, because Rayleigh have got the lovely Mill Hall.
Greg, if you'd like to come back on that?
So I think the consultation is wider than just the freight house. It's about tourism and visitors across Rochford, because Ochford, I don't even know where Oxford is, sorry, Rochford, across the whole area. So I think it's wider than that, so I won't be concentrating on one area. I think the best thing I can do is speak to the officers involved and make sure that they express to you what actually that consultation involves. So you'll be fully aware and versed on what is happening. Would that be?
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw.
Thank you. This is going back to Councillor McPherson with the Highway Rangers. Just to let you know, there's some money still sitting that hasn't been claimed from SEP that could go towards funding. It won't cover it all, but if we're looking about bringing back the Highway Rangers, we're may get told there isn't enough money. There is some money in SEP, and I've got a meeting on beginning of August, 8th of August, I think, which I could actually find out exactly how much it is.
Thank you.
If desired.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Joe?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Shaw, Mrs. Shaw's comments there, yes, greatly accepted, please, Chairman. Just a couple of points. It will be beneficial strongly to have a report on that key stakeholder and public consultation, and how they're going to run together as well, if they're together or separate. It was just one point that our officer may like to advise, but certain items on our work plan are
Statutory?
Thank you. And some of our newer members might not realise that. So when we're building up our work plan, we need to plan to also include those in at certain times of the year. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I'd like to make an observation. If I remember correctly, in COVID, there was a report that was paid for by the Levelling Up Fund, which was all about Rochford and how to use Rochford in the future and tourism and everything like that. So hopefully that's going to be included in this report. Greg?
I will make sure that whoever's running it, they will take note of that. And I'm sure they probably already have, but I can't obviously say that if I haven't spoken to them exactly about that, but I'm pretty sure they have. And if they haven't, I'll make them aware.
Okay. Councillor Booth? Oh, Joe, sorry.
Sorry, Chairman. Part of my question was about the statutory items that yourself or the officer might like to advise newer members. Thank you.
Okay. Greg, would you like to advise them?
Yeah, I think all I can advise is exactly what the councillor said. There are statutory items that come throughout the year. There are things that we have to cover as a committee and as officers and as an organisation. I think probably what we need to do is to make sure that they're clearly shown on the forward plan. So if there are anything, we'll make note of that for the future reference for all members.
Okay. Councillor Booth?
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to ensure that we continually review the One Team Transformation Programme as well, because to me that's one of our most significant strategic partnerships. And if things go awry there, we could be in lots of trouble. And as the One Team, it's really interesting to see that officers and paid members of staff are working closely together. And I think looking back at overview and scrutiny, there was a request that we had clarity about who is technically on our books at Rochford and who's technically on Brentwood's books in terms of the personnel. And also, I just wonder if there's an opportunity for us to learn something, because part of this committee is supposed to be a learning process. I understand it's about evaluating, scrutiny, but it should be a learning element to it, where perhaps there's things where we could work more closely together with members at Brentwood to learn, for example, attending their scrutiny and performance meetings to see if there's something we could learn from them, or indeed they could learn from us. And my second point, do you want to answer that one first, Greg?
Greg, do you want to
Thank
do that
you.
one first?
I'll take the easy one first, which is the next report of the one team will include the officers and which organisation they're aligned with, which was, I think, the question asked at the last meeting. So it is coming forward at the next Q1, I believe, which will be in September to this committee.
Councillor Booth, your second point.
Yeah, Mayor Chair, thank you very much for bearing with me. My second point is obviously this is a learning process for all of us here, and it's my understanding that there should be an element of scrutiny within each committee that's operating. So I wonder where there's an opportunity for us as the Scrutiny and Performance Committee to just ask some questions, how those chairs and vice chairs of other committees are evaluating their work, and is what hoped to be achieved actually being attained within those committees as well. And I think that's quite a new piece of work for us, because obviously it's got to be a partnership with those other committees as well. And I very much recall that from the learning we had about this new committee, and it was something that intrigued me at the time, Chair, how we're actually going to make that work.
Greg, you'd like to come back on that?
Thank you, Chair. So I understand that relationship is also between the chair here with the chairs of the other groups to make sure it's working well. What is it, the scrutiny that they're putting in place, the performance measures, and also I think it's the actions that are taken. So if actions are taken at committee, are they done? Are they followed through? And are we actually recording that process? So that's one of the scrutiny roles, because if actions are taken, they need to be followed through and they need to be completed. So I think that's part of the process as well.
Thank you, Greg. Third point.
Third point, and it will be my last, Chair. Don't want to hog the evening. I suppose also the question is, are they the right actions to be happening as well in terms of a strategic overview as well?
Greg.
All I can say to that is hopefully the actions or the reports that go forward would follow the corporate line, the themes that you have within that corporate strategy. I know there's a new one that's going to be emerging this year, so they should follow those themes through. So they should hopefully keep on line. But you are correct that if they're not, maybe that's something in the future. If you notice that there were reports or actions outside of what was the direction of the organisation, it may be something that would be called in.
Thank you. Councillor Mill.
One thing I can say from audit, we're spreadsheeting where we're at and updating that, so it'll be rather easy to follow from us, which would dovetail nicely with that. It's just my perception that at the moment, the one team has had a review of its top tier, and now there's a sort of a rearrangement going on at the different levels below, and sometimes that will affect who does what and may actually save us money in some areas, because and that kind of report, nicely clearly laid out, it's the intention to give us something like that. They could even be in grid format of where we're at, so it's easy for us to unravel the points that Councillor Booth has mentioned, just to, almost like a traffic light system.
Greg.
Just to clarify, and it sounds like quite a good idea, is that actually, apart from the top tiers of officers that have been changed, actually service, you'd like to see a list of the services and then a kind of rag rating, which ones have gone through the process of bringing them together as one team, ones that are still outstanding to come through, and probably the ones that never will. For example, refuse service. I think it's the classic we always use. It's just not likely to be brought together ever, is it?
That sounds fair, and of course what we'd like to see is a smile on our chairman's face then when he gets the information. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Webb.
So this may not be for this year, it might be for a future year, but I think it'd be nice. We need to see a piece of work looking at the change from the executive system to the committee system, how well that's going, how well that's been implemented, and if it's being effective. I know we are using the system for a minimum of 5 years, but I still think there's a piece of work that needs to be done to actually see, is it delivering what we wanted it to deliver for our residents?
Greg.
Yeah, I think that's a very good and important point, especially as you've just got into it. Actually, some kind of review at some point would be really helpful to make sure we've got the committees right, the system right, and how it's working correct. So, yeah, I'll take that away.
Councillor Shaw.
I might have got this wrong, but I've just been listening to. Are we asking our committees, whatever they audit or like whatever, to mark their own homework? The chairman's to mark, so they're doing something in a committee system and they're going, oh yeah, we've done that right. But surely they should be coming back to us as to review if they're doing it right. Have I misheard something somewhere on what we've just been talking about? Sorry, can someone come back to me on that, please?
Greg,
So-
if you like, sorry.
So, at the recent training we had around this, the work of this committee, I asked that question, and I asked, should we invite the chairman of each of the committees to come along here and book them into the diary so that we can actually meet with each of them. And although the trainer said that was a sensible idea, what he recommended is that we invite them along with a purpose, so that we identify a piece of work within their work plan that we can then ask them about, rather than just inviting them ad hoc. I wasn't convinced. I felt that actually we would be good to invite each chairman along so that we see them at least once throughout the year. But the trainer wasn't quite so convinced that was the right approach.
And can I just come back on that? I think it's 6 of one and a half dozen of the others. When you get a report, you'd hope the chairman and the vice chairman look at the report and actually look, it makes sense. And it's a good idea before they even discuss it. So they are sort of, as you say, marking homework up to that point. Then once they've voted on it or not voted on it, I think that's when we come in. Or maybe they ask us beforehand to review it.
Can I come back on that? So if that's, I'm going to pick on audit, sorry. So they put a report forward that can come to us before it goes to full council. Because once it goes to full council and it's agreed, well, yeah, right, you're right, Councillor Cape, but it is right. But if it is agreed, then we can't do anything about it. So that's why my biggest concern is they're marking their own homework.
Right, Greg, I'm sorry, you're dying to come in here, aren't you?
I think there's a few different things. So the committees receive reports. They follow their guidelines on what they're going to be deciding on anyway. So housing committee, or if it's communities, they get their reports come through. The members on that committee, they make a decision. It's not actually we're deciding if the decision is necessarily wrong or right. It's actually, has that been carried out properly? Then they've taken that decision and it's been implemented, as it were. So that's kind of the scrutiny role. If you want to actually bring a decision in that you think is incorrect or not follow the right process, then that's something different as well to that. I think what we're talking about is the work that's undertaken by committee are the actions that they agree, making sure that the chair makes sure that those actions are taken and followed through.
Councillor Booth.
Yeah, just one clarification. I know under the last committee that we could call things back in to see if they're having the desired impact, as well as just being carried out a series of actions. And we could do that after a 6-month period to allow that time to see if the impact had embedded. Is that still true with this new title for this committee?
Greg, if you want to come back.
So I think that it's slightly different on this committee, but actually in essence, we won't be calling in that decision, but you could call in a report to review how that has gone in that way. So it won't be necessarily that decision, but actually you've taken a decision committee, you've put something in place. We'd like to review how that is now working or implementing. But that would also be for the chair to speak to the chair of the other group and say, we would like to look at that because it is cutting across their committee as well. But you can, it wouldn't be necessarily the decision, how it's implemented and how it's working now. A different piece of work.
It does give us that in the terms of reference. This committee, before it's implemented, we can call it in. I did ask Veronica to put something out, how to call something in, which I'm sure she's working very hard at doing. So hopefully you will get that soon. Councillor Mill?
Just to clarify things, when we're not marking homework, what we were looking at was that there are delays in getting replies about concerns on risk assessments, and officers are being asked in different levels and not replying in time. And we want the replies and we want to know what the update is on these things. This isn't marking homework. And the other thing is because we're not very happy, of course, with the private sector at the moment and all the delays in our main audit reports either. And to that extent, Jonathan Stevenson has written to the Minister of State, the new minister, about it directly, and I have a copy of the letter. So what we're actually doing is actually trying to tighten all this up and nail it down. It is scrutinising in a way, and we're quite happy to share that with the Scrutiny Committee and take advice, because you may look at it from a slightly different angle and may have suggestions. So that's very welcome.
Thank you.
So
Greg,
that's the way it's got to go. We can't be trying to make something a success. If it's working properly, it should function properly.
okay, Greg, do you want to come back on that?
Only to agree with what Councillor Milner said. Actually, the audit function is, to check that they're actually getting the responses. And I understand that the last audit committee, there weren't the right responses in time. And that's part of the audit role, is to challenge why they're not getting those responses. What's happening? Why is that not happening? And to actually make sure they do come to the committee. So we're up to date on those audits.
Thank you. Councillor Cripps?
Yeah, I agree with what Mike said. At the third outside training that came in on he laboured the point about the committees themselves must impose their own scrutiny and control over what they're doing, and then this sits as an umbrella over the top of it. And if we're not happy that the direction that's taken, then you dive in and you call that in specifically and expose it that way. So he did make that point, and he actually laboured it, and it took a bit of time for me to get what he was getting at, to be honest, at the time. But he wouldn't let it go, would he, Mike? He kept on about there, scrutinising themselves, and then we scrutinise what they've scrutinised, basically. So I think that's probably what he means, how it works. Sounds a bit obscure to me, but...
Councillor Brewer?
Thank you, Chair. I'm really just going to say what Councillor Webb and Councillor Cripps said at that training. It took me, new to this as well, it took me a while to understand what he was getting at. But I think Councillor Cripps has just summed it up completely there, that's what he did, really labour the point in our training. And that's what I took away. So thank you.
Thank you. Any more? All right, I've got a couple I'd like to put on there, because we can call in our partners. I'd like to really call in Essex and find out what they're doing. Again, part of the highway rangers is where they're looking at getting the landowners to look after the foliage and stuff. I'd love to know how they're getting on with that and what percentage they've done throughout the district or whatever, who they found out, who owns what. So something maybe we can ask them to send a report, or maybe we might be lucky enough to have someone come along. That'll be you, would it? And what was it? Also, with us moving to the new offices, I think it'd be interesting to have a look at what impact that's having on the staff, because they're only going to be in there for a certain amount of time, and what the exit strategy is maybe from when in 2 years we'll move into wherever we decide to move to. So that maybe that can go in there as well. Thank you. Anybody else got anything else? If not, cool, I'll move on. So members, that was just for noting. However, you can, if you think of anything else, you can please feel free to email me or Mike or Veronica or Greg, and we can see what we can put it on there. But we will look at the ideas that go on there, try and sort a place in the future when they're going to be relevant, and the ones that are not relevant to us, send them to the correct committee. Okay, anything else you want to add to that, Greg? Or?
Absolutely fine, Chair. Thank you. Thank you, members.
Thank you. Right then, so this is the business of this evening finished, and the meeting ends at 8:09. Thank you very much for coming.